Hey everyone, I'm Scooby-Foo. You're here for a review of all the new Titan and Warlock exotics in Season of the Hunt. This is gonna be a big one, so let's get to it. Let's go for Warlock first, since I kinda don't have precious scars. Don't worry, I don't have too much to say on it anyways. Let's spin the wheel to figure out which exotic we're doing first. Just kidding, I've already decided. Necrotic Grip, you're up. So, Necrotic Grip is a pair of exotic gauntlets dropped from Legend or Master Lost sectors on days where you get the idea. The exotic perk, Grasp of the Devourer, applies a scaling dot to enemies you hit with the melee. When they die with the debuff on them, they'll cause an AoE effect, spreading the dot to nearby targets, and it says it restores melee energy, but it doesn't. Melee attacks? What about ranged melee attacks, I hear you ask? Well, Celestial Fire and Ball Lightning both work out right, applying the dot and proccing the AoE on kills. The tendrils from Chain Lightning, Top Tree Storm, do not work, and Penumbral Blast, Stasis, won't apply the dot if the enemy survives the hit, but will cause the AoE if it lands a killing blow. That leaves us with Top Tree Dawn, Middle Tree Arc, or Stasis. I'm choosing Stasis because it's new, cool, and good. Also because it makes the best build in my opinion. Build time! You know the drill, let's set up our Stasis tree. Our abilities are Healing Rift, since we won't need the Empowering Rift, and Duskfield Grenades to pull enemies together. For our aspects, we have Ice Flare Bolts to give us grenade energy back on shatters, as well as spawning more Seekers to freeze enemies, and Frost Pulse to generate an AoE freeze when we cast our Rift. For fragments, we have Whisper of Hedrons for a damage bonus after freezing an enemy, Fissures to increase the damage and radius of our shatters, Durance to increase the duration of our slows and lingering abilities, and Refractions to grant us Rift energy when we defeat a slowed or frozen enemy. Weapons! We're not using Thorn. We're using the other obvious choice instead, Monte Carlo, which gives melee energy back on dealing damage with a chance to fully recharge our melee on kill, along with its trait, Markov Chain, which is basically just Swashbuckler and Grave Robber smashed into one. For energy weapons, I'm using a slug or sniper, and for my heavy, I'm using a grenade launcher. If you really want to use different energy or heavy weapons, it won't break the build, but I think that what I do works best. For stats, focus on strength, recovery, and discipline, in that order. Armor mods. Use Finders and Scavengers for whatever special you're using, melee resistance and concussive dampener in your chest, bomber in your bond, and fastball in your gloves. For combat mods, I'm running Stacks on Stacks to double my Charge with Light generation, 2 copies of Firepower to refund roughly 40% of my grenade energy on use while charged with Light, Radiant Light for the 20 Strength, and Sustained Charge to gain Charge with Light on multi-kills with Monte Carlo. If you feel like you have enough Strength, you can run another Firepower to get more grenade energy back on use, or Supercharge to get +2 max Charge with Light stacks. So what does using this build look like? It's a lot of freezing and hearing Monte Carlo shoot. You've been seeing a Gambit match play out this whole time. If you want to see that on its own, I've got a card in the top right and a link in the description for it. Promise to actually have it there this time. In a nutshell though, you'll open by grouping enemies together with your Duskfield, firing off your melee into the group, and mowing them down with Monte Carlo, which should hopefully have ×5 Markov Chain and Whisper of Hedrons active for a 106% damage increase to Monte Carlo. After that, just keep throwing your grenade and melee as they come up, while clearing everything with Monte Carlo, using your special weapon for especially thick enemies, and your heavy for bosses. Before I move on to the other Warlock exotic though, I should mention the Thorn in this exotic's side. Thorn. The gun, not the plant bits. Thorn has a completely unique interaction with this exotic, where a final blow with a Thorn shot, not the dot from Thorn, the bullet itself, will cause the exact same area dot that you'd get from a melee kill. If you want to use this build with more of a focus on guns and less on the melee ability, you can just swap out Monte Carlo for Thorn and have fun pew-pewing your enemies to death. Really, it's a good enough combo that I used it in Day 1 Deepstone Crypt, so don't feel bad if you want to go for Thorn over Monte. Final side things to mention for this build. If Penumbral Blast doesn't one-shot the target it hits, you're best off punching them again if possible to get ×5 Markov Chain for Monte. Also beware that you do lose all stacks of Markov Chain if you switch to your special or heavy, so you'll need to regain those if you do. Also, I wouldn't recommend this build for pure boss DPS since the build is based around ad clear. That being said, I took this build into Gambit, the hardest PvE content depending on who you ask, and it worked very well, so there you go. On to Dawn Chorus. Dawn Chorus is an exotic helmet acquired through Legend or Master Lost sectors on days where they... Oh, right. The exotic perk Rites of Ember causes your Daybreak projectiles to burn on contact and deal additional damage to burning enemies. Your burns last longer, and you regain some melee energy every time a burn deals damage. But how much does it increase the damage? Well, testing on Bottom Tree Dawnblade. Actually, just so you know, there's 3 different things that do damage with Bottom Tree Super. There's the direct hit, what I assume is an AoE, and a ground wave that's specific to Bottom Tree. It's possible to hit all 3 if an enemy is on the ground, and I'll be calling that perfect damage, whereas hitting just the direct and AoE will be imperfect. Alright, let's back to the numbers. You can get 8 projectiles out of a single Daybreak Super. Okay, technically you can get more if you kill adds with the Daybreak projectiles as well, but that's kinda unreliable for boss DPS, so I'm not counting it here. Dealing 12,006 direct damage, 8,549 AoE damage, and 5,857 ground wave damage adds up to 26,412 perfect damage, and 20,555 imperfect damage. Taking 7.68 seconds to dump out the super gives us a variable DPS from 21,411 to 27,512, and a variable total damage of 164,440 to 211,296. Okay, we can finally get to Dawn Chorus numbers now that we have our baseline. Spoiler alert, it's a 45% increase across the board for Daybreak. Lucky us, we can just take those numbers we had before and increase them by that amount. They're all up on screen. The important ones are 29,804 imperfect, or 38,296 perfect damage per projectile, 238,438 imperfect, or 306,379 perfect total damage, and 31,045 imperfect, or 39,892 perfect DPS. For comparison, a perfect Philo deals 41,695 DPS over 1 mag, and 31,403 DPS over the full reserves. A perfect Ikelos SR deals 32,603 DPS over 1 mag, and 23,838 over the full reserves, and a Nighthawk deals 212,349 damage, well, instantly. So it's not the highest DPS thing in the world, but it is serviceable if you're out of ammo during a DPS phase for a boss. Also, obviously, it'll kill any and all adds you fling your sword at, but outside of maybe Gambit where ad killing speed is important, I don't think it's very necessary to use this for ad clear. All that being said, let's make a build where we try to generate our Dawnblade as quickly as possible. Starting off, we're running Dawnblade, obviously, Bottom Tree specifically to increase the potency of our super. I struggled with selecting an exotic weapon for a bit, but I think I have a hole in my brain because Bad Juju is literally all about generating your super faster, with its exotic perk String of Curses refilling the mag, granting a 20% damage increase per stack, and generating extra super per stack on kill, stacking up to 5 times. It's got a catalyst too, granting orb gen on double kills and increased duration for String of Curses. Use a sniper or slug for special, and my personal choice for heavy is a grenade launcher. Armor mods, the usual. Finders and scavengers if you have mod space, fastball, resist mods, thermal overload and surge eater. Quite honestly, these will be mostly the same for all the builds. Combat mods are the spicy bit though. Again, we're focusing on getting our super up as much as possible, so we're going for Swift Charge and Taking Charge to generate Charge with Light stacks. Stacks on stacks to double our Charge with Light generation, Supercharge to up our maximum stacks of Charge with Light from 2 to 4, and finally, to use all these stacks, we have Energy Converter, which consumes all our stacks of Charge with Light upon throwing a grenade, giving us super energy back per stack consumed, granting up to 50% of our super, after which it'll no longer activate. Alrighty then, you've been seeing me doing a solo Legend Lost sector as the background footage for this build. Again, card in the top right, link in the description for a video of just the runs. But to give you an idea for the flow of the build, you'll start off by getting to ×4 Charge with Light through picking up orbs and getting multi-kills with Bad Juju, throw your grenade to generate 25% super on the spot, continue killing with Bad Juju to generate more super energy. If your grenade recharges before you get 50% of your super, throw it again to get up to that, then just slay out until your super's fully charged, and use your super on whatever you feel needs it, whether that be a boss or a particularly large group of adds. Not much else to say on this build. It's not the best build for rapid super generation. Titan can do that the best in my opinion. But the point of this build wasn't to be the best build in the game, it's meant to be a Dawn Chorus build, and it succeeds at that. As for the exotic itself, I'm personally not really a huge fan of it. Super-based exotics are rough to make builds around at the best of times, and Daybreak is a super I almost never actually run, so even though the exotic is theoretically sound in its use and damage increase, I'm not really expecting myself to be running this anytime soon. So there's Warlock done with. Necrotic Grip is very fun to use with Monte Carlo, and Dawn Chorus is useful. On to Titan. 2 choices are Icefall Mantle and Precious Scars, one of which changing our barricade and the other affecting the Revive Overshield. Let's cover Precious Scars first since I don't have it. So, Precious Scars. After reviving or being revived, you gain an aura that provides an overshield to you and allies in radius. Here's the bullet points from what I've gathered online. 1. The overshield does not override the regular revive overshield that you get. 2. If you lose the overshield, you'll lose the buff that grants your allies the overshield as well. 3. There seems to be no way to refresh the 10-second timer on the overshield. And 4. The overshield has around 100 health and seems to regen if you don't take damage. Unfortunately, that's really all I have on Precious Scars. If you have it, it's something to switch to in Trials or Elim in PvP if you have time to when you or someone else dies on your team, but I don't see much of a use for it over other exotics in PvE, and there's only a few PvP modes where you can revive at all, so yeah. It's good at what it does, it's just that what it does is very specific. I should mention though, the design, Kintsugi, looks amazing. I love it, 10 out of 10. On to Icefall Mantle, an exotic I actually have. So, Icefall Mantle's perk, Glacial Guard, completely changes your barricade by turning it into a personal overshield for 20 seconds that does several things. First off, while you have the overshield, you cannot sprint, use your lift, or slide. However, you can still do things like throw grenades, punch, stuff like that. Second off, when you take any form of damage, the 20-second duration is completely refreshed, but there is no way to regen the overshield's health itself. You can still regen your natural health though. Third, your barricade cannot recharge through any means at all while you still have the overshield. This includes, but is not limited to, natural ability regen, Whisper of Refractions, sunspots, and Traveler's Chosen. And lastly, the overshield provides 100 health in PvP and around 200 health in PvE. So that gives us two primary ways that I can think of to use it. The first way is to use it while sniping so that you can pretty much just ignore any chip damage you're taking, and the second way is the big manly way by using it with a shotgun or sword so that you can tank something like a boss stomp. Let's go for that one. So, the objective of the build is to have our barricade available at any time for when we need it, so that we can use it to allow for riskier close-range plays, or as a saving grace to pop when we suddenly need to tank something. Also grenades. Because really, why not grenades? So for that, our subclass will be Bottom Tree Solar for sunspots and the health regen on ability kill, and our weapons will be Traveler's Chosen for the exotic perk. To put it shortly, you get kills with Travelers to gain stacks, and hold reload to gain 10% ability energy for each stack, up to 10 stacks for a full recharge. Our energy will be a sniper for when getting close isn't an option, and our heavy will be a sword, specifically falling guillotine if you have it. However, if you need unstoppable and anti-barrier, or just better boss DPS, you can replace your exotic with Lament and your primary with whatever has unstoppable. Just be a bit more mindful of your overshield since you'll have to wait for it to recharge after it wears off. Anyways, the armor mods are, again, Finders and Scavengers, specifically a melee-resistant concussive dampener, fastball, and thermal overload and surge eater for grenade loops against overload champions. Combat mods. We've got Swift Charge for generating charge with light on pulse, SMG, or sidearm multi-kills. Switch this out to the appropriate mod if you end up using a different primary. 2 copies of Firepower so that we get roughly 2/5 of our grenade back when we throw it in exchange for 1 stack of charge with light, and Protective Light to consume all of our charge with light stacks when we get to low health for increased damage reduction. So what does using this build look like? Well, if you're playing Gambit or something that requires speed, it probably looks bad. During something like a solo Lost Sector, which you've been seeing this whole time, you'll mostly be using it when running back to cover isn't an option, or you want to use it to allow riskier plays that you couldn't normally survive. As I mentioned earlier, Traveler's Chosen's perk won't regenerate your barricade while you have the overshield up, but what you can do if you need 2 overshields back to back is wait for your first one to wear off, then hold reload to proc Traveler's Chosen's perk to recharge up to 100% of your barricade immediately, letting you go right back to having double health. I think that's about it for this build. All I really have left to say is that you shouldn't be too conservative with your use of the overshield. Remember, it's an ability with a fairly short cooldown, so even if you pop it and end up wasting it, you're only out about 30 seconds of waiting for it to come back up. As usual, there's a card and link for the Legend Lost Sectors you've been seeing. As for my thoughts on the exotic itself, it's definitely unique, and can facilitate a much more aggressive playstyle while the overshield is up. Gotta say though, unless you're using it to combat an invader in Gambit, this exotic will not do you any favors in there. One final PvP fun fact for it. With the overshield at full health at 10 resilience, you can barely tank a rapid fire frame sniper headshot. Barely. But you can. But that's it for the video. Thank you for watching this review of all the new exotics, except Precious Scars, kinda. Leave a comment down below if one of the builds interested you enough to give it a try yourself. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons, and once again, I'm Scooby Foo. I will see you all in the next one.